Redditors, what is the most terrifying thing you've ever experienced while home alone? Before we start, welcome back to Reddit Stories Hub. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Here, we'll be telling you interesting, thought-provoking stories from Reddit. So, get comfortable and let's jump right in. Story 1. My husband away and it was just me alone with the kids and massive storm outside. I hear a strange noise upstairs, like a banging noise. I go up and check both kids, see the R sleeping soundly, and go across the hallway to see the loft hatch door in the ceiling, above my head lifting 2 or 3 inches upwards, like someone was peeking at me from the darkness of attic, then slam back down again. As I'm stood there, petrified, it happens again. Then I hear my phone go in my pocket. I pick it up, still stood panicking on my landing, and it's my neighbor. I'm trying to be calm, thinking if it's a burglar, I don't want to let him know I've seen him, when my neighbor tells me the storm's ripped off the tiles on my roof. The wind was howling through the attic and causing that shitty loft hatch to lift up with the breeze. Neighbor came, checked everything, and we damn well got a locking hatch door when we got the roof fixed. Story 2. Not home alone, but upstairs alone. I saw a doppelganger of my mom a few years back, and I think she heard mine. I was sitting in my bed and looked up when I heard her coming up the stairs. She walked by my door, looking straight at me with no expression, and walked into her room and closed the door. I'd said hi as she walked, but figured whatever. She didn't hear me, or maybe she was getting something from her room. Then, about 5 seconds later, she yells up the stairs from downstairs and says, "Did you call me?" And I am not ashamed to say I freaked the fuck out. She came upstairs, looked down the hall, and said, "Did you close my door?" I didn't, and neither did she. She never closed that door because one of our cats primarily lived in her bedroom, and so she always kept the door open so the cat could come and go as she pleased. And it wasn't just closed as if the wind had shut it. It was fully closed, and the windows were shut. Ma said she had very clearly heard me yell, "Hey, Mom, come here," from upstairs. I had done no such thing. I'm never entirely sure what I believe and what I don't, but I was totally sober, not tired, and it wasn't some movement out of the corner of the eye thing. Story 3. A couple years back, I woke up at 3 a.m. to see someone walk past my bedroom door. I called out in my just woken up, not thinking haze, thinking maybe my boyfriend had come over while I was sleeping, but got no response. So knew it wasn't him. Got out of bed, stupidly forgetting to take my phone or any kind of defensive item with me, and went into the front room where the light was on to be met with a random guy staring at one of the walls. I asked him who he was and got no answer. At this point, I'd actually woken up enough to realize I could really be in trouble, so ran back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and ran outside on the phone to the police, who showed up within a few minutes. Turns out the guy was mentally ill, and to this day, neither myself nor the police know how he got in. Story 4. I moved into our house a month before my husband did, and I was painting our guest room with the windows wide open. I was busy painting, listening to music, when I realized it had gotten dark outside. I heard the leaves crunching outside, but didn't think anything of it, because we have a lot of neighbors who walk their dogs. When I went to close the windows, I saw a man standing in my backyard, under the tree, maybe 5 feet from our back door, staring up at me. I fell to the floor and realized the back glass door was probably open, and nothing but the screen, which he could have easily just walked into my house. Crawled to my phone and called my husband, who then called 911 while rushing home to me. We have a 6-foot-tall fence around our yard. This person hopped it to watch me. I couldn't sleep right at night for months. Story 5. One day while I was working afternoons a couple years back, I woke up at around 10 a.m. and started to watch American Dad before getting up. Next thing you know, I hear my back door open. A normal thing in our home since we only use the back door. But no one was supposed to be home yet. I assumed it was my mom and didn't think anything of it. Then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs as my bedroom was on the 2nd floor. I called out to my mom and got no response. Then my door cracks open and a head pops in. It's a 30-ish-year-old man with a blonde beard and a big mane of greasy hair who looks shocked to see me. At the time, I was about 260 pounds, 6'3", and 20 years old. Rem. I was also sitting in only my boxers. Before I was able to realize what was happening, he asked, "Is this the residence?" To which I reply, "No." He makes a swift exit, and before I can recollect my thoughts, he's not even in my driveway. Talked to a family friend who is a veteran police officer. Turns out a man has been pulling this kind of stunt to rob people in nearby towns. Story 6. I was babysitting a kid who had a video monitor and was told that she wouldn't wake up while the parents were out, and if she did to call them right away. I was watching TV with the monitor set off to the side to keep an eye on her, and right around 11, the camera's view shifted a few inches. It then began to slightly jiggle like someone was messing with it. I was squinting at it, trying to decide what I was actually seeing, and I kid you not, the whole screen burst to static for a few seconds, and the kid started wailing. She stood up and was screaming in her crib, just like one of the kids from The Sims. When she didn't fall back asleep after a few minutes, I called Mom and she said, "Okay, we're on our way home anyway. We think she has nightmares sometimes. It's fine." Never again. Story 7. I was about 21 or 22 and living by myself at the time, and I left my window open on a pleasant night. It was low enough to the ground that you could get in if you really tried, but the screen wasn't easy to take off, and I lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I didn't even think twice about it. Woke up in the middle of the night because I smelled smoke, and I reached out to turn on my lamp, and my hand hit what was very obviously a person. My brain fully woke up at that point, and I realized there was a shirtless man in my bedroom, smoking a cigarette and staring at me. I remember yelling for him to get out, and I must have spooked him just as badly as he spooked me because he leapt out my window and took off. I slammed it shut and moved a bookcase in front of it, and when I went out the next morning in the daylight, found the screen sitting against the house. Didn't sleep the rest of the night, and I haven't slept with a window more than cracked ever since. I also absolutely refused to live on the ground floor of a building. I don't know if he was planning to rob me or rape me or both, but it was absolutely terrifying and makes me wonder how many times it happened, and I didn't wake up. Story 8. My BF worked away from home a lot, and I always struggled to sleep on the first night he was away. On this occasion, I was woken by the sound of a man shouting, and then someone banging on wood or a front door. I jumped up and looked out my bedroom window just in time to see a man dressed all in black walking through our garden towards the house. I ran to the front of the house to look out of the front window and make sure he kept going. He did, but he met up with another man dressed in black walking towards my house. I was terrified and called the police. They arrived in a matter of minutes and checked out the back garden, but they were gone. Turned out a neighbor had caught them both trying to steal his car, and one had escaped through the gardens, while the other had run through the roads, and they had met up outside my house. I didn't sleep at all that night, and my brother came to stay the next night. I'm so glad I live in an apartment now, much more secure. Story 9. Not me, but a good friend had this happen about 5 years ago. She was in her kitchen. Next thing she knew, she woke up on the kitchen floor with 2 broken legs and having lost 3 hours of time. At the hospital, the doctor told her the x-rays of her legs showed injuries, breaks, consistent with a fall or jump from a high height. Think a multi-story fall. All of the doors and windows of her house were closed and locked, and there was no evidence that she had jumped off of or out of anything. It remains a mystery to this day. We joke that she was abducted by aliens, hence the fugue state, and then abruptly returned home with too much force. Story 10. I was asleep at home alone. When I turned over in bed, I casually opened my eyes a little whilst turning, and they were shut again just as quickly. In that split second, I could have sworn I had seen a man stood at the bottom of my bed. I laid still, awake with my eyes closed, trying not to act like I was awake and trying to listen for any sound in the room of someone breathing or moving. Couldn't hear anything. I was too scared to open my eyes and look, consoled myself that there wasn't any way someone could have gotten in without me hearing a window smash, and fell back asleep. When I got up in the morning, though, the front door was open. They didn't take anything and left no signs of being there. Was still very, very creepy, though. Story 11. When I was younger, maybe around 11, in 2003, I lived with my mother and sister in a 3-bedroom house. My parents had recently divorced. One night, I heard a muffled, foreign-sounding voice booming from the hallway. It sounded like it was giving a speech. I froze, scared to death, and went back to sleep. In the morning at the breakfast table, I told my mom what had happened. She froze and said, "You heard him too?" Apparently, 2 weeks prior, she was vacuuming and heard a voice speaking in a foreign voice coming from upstairs. Stressed from the divorce, she chalked it up to stress and ignored it, and continued to vacuum. Shortly after, one night, my sister flew down the stairs screaming and crying. I found out the next morning that the voice woke her up and was coming from the corner of her room. She assumed it was her computer, but her computer was shut off. Neither my mother nor I had told my sister what we had heard, so this turned out to be the third isolated instance. To this day, we have absolutely no idea who or where the voice was coming from. Story 12. When my dad died, I was in my family home by myself, and I kept hearing a small bell ringing. I'd lived there for years and never heard the bell before or since. I searched around the house, and it was coming from my mum's bedroom. On the window ledge was a small porcelain bell, but it didn't have the ringer inside. I went back downstairs, and the ringing started again. I rang my mum at work and asked her if she knew where it could be coming from. She broke down crying and said years before I was born, her and my dad had agreed to ring the bell if they ever died to let the other person know they were okay. I'm almost certain I never knew this story. Story 13. I was in college. The dorm I lived in was an all-male dorm, but was originally a female-only dorm. I came home from work late, around midnight, and when I returned, my roommate was already asleep and snoring. My roommate had a very deep voice when he spoke. I was checking my email before bed with my back to our bunk beds, and I heard a distinctly female voice whisper in my ear, "What are you doing in my room?" I immediately turned around and looked at my roommate, who was still asleep, snoring. I composed myself and assumed it was my roommate, despite having a higher pitch than his voice. I shut down my computer, hopped onto the top bunk, and tried to fall asleep with my back facing the center of the room. A few minutes later, I heard the same voice whisper louder, "What are you doing in my room?" from what sounded like behind me. At this point, I jumped out of bed and looked at my roommate, who was still asleep. I ended up leaving my room and falling asleep in the well-lit common room. It was a very stressful last couple of months in that room. Story 14. I grew up about 20 mins outside of town. One night I was about 11, and I got up to get a glass of water. The water came from the fridge, and I always kept a glass beside the fridge for me at night. In the kitchen, there was a big window above the sink that overlooked the front yard, which included just fields, etc. It was very dark outside and could only see a little way out of the light I had turned on in the kitchen while filling my glass. There was a trampoline out in the front yard of the house, was a decent way away from the window. So, anyways, that night while drinking my water, I was standing back from the window, but still looking outside. I then noticed some movement in the dark that didn't make sense. It took a minute for my brain to realize that it was someone bouncing on the trampoline. I really started to focus on it, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. As I was doing this, the figure slowly stopped bouncing, and I could tell it must have noticed me, and I could feel all the hairs on my body stand up. An instant later, whatever it was moved really fast towards the window, almost like instantaneously it was looking at me through the window. I only looked for a second because this all happened very fast, but from what I recall, my brain registered it as a human face, but that something didn't feel right. I took my cup with me to my room and had a bad time trying to sleep. I never turned on the light while getting water at night again, and never looked out the window while drinking the water either. So many weird things happened in that home. Story 15. I was in my college apartment, and my roommate had just moved out. Her room was directly across from mine, with the living room between us. I had cleaned out her room and then closed the door. I left my bedroom door open when I went to take a shower one night. My bathroom was connected to my bedroom. I also happened to leave the bathroom door open. While I was in the shower, I thought I heard a woman talking. I had never been able to hear my neighbors talking before, but figured they just happened to be talking in their bathroom, which shared a wall or something. When I got out of the shower, I was surprised to see a black void when there should have been the bright white closed door of my old roommate's door, reflecting in the moonlight. I figured I just forgot to close the door and went and closed it. The next night, I once again went to take a shower and left my room and the bathroom door open. But this time I checked to make sure the other door was latched, and the front door was double locked. When I came back out, I once again saw the void with the door wide open. I slammed my door closed and locked that shit so fast. I convinced myself there was a logical explanation, so the next night I once again checked all of the doors and then closed my bedroom door. This time I came out of the shower and my bedroom door was open along with the other door. I showered and slept with my bedroom door locked from that point on. I guess this took place over several nights home alone, and I may not have even been alone. Still, the creepiest thing that ever happened, though. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.